Hi, welcome to the Mohua show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's episode we have Archana Jain. Archana Jain is a senior advisor and consultant at Purple Audacity and Insights and Strategy Consultancy. She's a career market research professional. She's got over 20 years and she's a mom for a 27-year-old child. Unbelievable. Fitness enthusiast, a traveler and a reader, and is trying to reconnect with her inner writer because she believes we all have a story, which is really true, which is waiting to be told. She strongly believes in the need for women to be financially aware and independent, which I completely agree with her. Whatever be the circumstances, she wants to share today her experiences and help other women grow from weakness to strength. So welcome, Archana, in today's episode.
Thank you, Mohua. Thank you for inviting me over. It's lovely to be here.
Do you feel that women are hesitant to invest?
Yeah, actually, I feel, and I've seen that in my own experience, it's not that the hesitancy at times may be coming because of their financial circumstances, but at times it's often also because growing up, we've all been, dad will take care of it. Uncles will take care of it. Later, when you get married, the husband will take care of it. And all the women typically end up doing is have a few stashes here and there for their own, so-called pocket money or their discretionary spends. But they don't really, they're not really part of the investment decisions in most of the households.
I completely agree with you. So on growing up and talking about discussions or decisions around investing, how involved or uncomfortable did you feel? Because when I look back at my own situation in life, I think we all come from that same generation where we got married in our 20s, and in your father's home, you're really not talking about investing really ever. You're just investing in yourself and in your career. And after you get married and you move into your home with your husband, I was never ever involved in any decision as far as the investing of our assets was concerned. And that left me over the years become so insecure that I could not put myself together to even participate in any conversation, around investing. And I think I eventually became insecure but comfortable in this understanding that I'm not capable. So did you also feel like that? And how did you overcome this?
Oh, you're actually so right. Growing up, like you said, this was not a topic for family conversations. So
Absolutely.
while I might have, being in a joint family, I might have heard my dad and uncles talking about money. So somewhere it's kind of getting into your head. But then I never saw my mom or my aunt sitting down and having those family discussions. They were doing what they were. The mom or the aunts were given a certain budget, and their job was to balance that budget and just make sure that everything kept smoothly running. Other than that, they did not have any real role to play. And in my case, so growing up, I don't think we were ever part of any such thing. It was never discussed openly. So there was no, let's say, financial education happening at the childhood level or the family level. Once I got married, initially it was really not exactly like this because I was working at that point in time, and we started out in agencies, so how the you're just basically struggling for the salary to the payslip to payslip. So at that point in time, you're just pretty much taking all your money and just trying to make ends meet, really,
For all of us.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And gradually, as we started earning more, for me, things changed probably when we took an assignment overseas and when I actually stopped working for a bit, to bring up my two young children. And then, like you said, Mohua, actually, I got very, very comfortable. And at a point, I said, it's okay. I have money when I want to spend it. And then that's how it kind of continued. I got very comfortable. It's not like as a family, we did make investments and my husband would keep me informed, but I was not really part of that decision making. Even the first house we bought was, one day we decided and, it was purchased. I never even came down for the purchase. So I would say that, yeah, we tend to get comfortable in our own zones and we just leave this to the men because that's what we've seen. Most of us have seen happening as we were growing up.
So, when you talk about being comfortable and you talk about women and money and decisions that women make, when they get married and, in financial decisions that they make, I think in many marriages across, and this goes for all our listeners who are listening to us right now, is this that women move cities. And I will say this to you from my own example. I mean, I was raised in Delhi. I had an absolutely flourishing career in Delhi. And I moved to Kolkata, and yes, I'm a Bengali, but I'm originally from Delhi. And my business was Delhi based. And fortunately, I did get a job, with a PR agency, and I called Genesis PR, which is among the largest PR agencies in the country. I went on to head their branch, and then I was pregnant, and we had to move cities because I had a pregnancy which required me to take rest, and I had to take a sabbatical from my career. And when I came down, invariably, I was always compromising on any work that I was taking up because, I always tried to get a part time consulting after my son was about 11, 12 months old. I was doing full time work, but in my head, I just wanted to be left off by 4 o'clock by the time my son would wake up and I could take him on the round of the pram in this, around the neighborhood. But what happened in the process is this that invariably a man's income keeps going higher and higher, and a woman's self confidence goes lower and lower. And this is so proportionate. It just proportionately grows and it proportionately reduces because for working women, and I think for everybody, actually, I will not put that as a bracket for working women alone. Anybody who becomes a housewife becomes extremely dependent on the man, and just the whole sense of what you're doing at home, of raising a child. I mean, you can buy a house, you can't make it a home. So there is no value added to that. And like you, me too, I was never part of any investment decisions ever. And yes, I started believing that I do not have the intelligence to think finance. And I never had the courage to become an entrepreneur only till 2018 when I began out on my own, because all along everybody told me that, oh no, I don't think you can manage money. And I think this is for so many of us. And just to bridge this gap, is why today, we both are talking, Archana. And I'd really like you to tell me a little bit about, do you think that there are companies today? I mean, there's millions of companies all around, okay, who talk about wealth management. There is a company specifically for real estate management because in India, we understand gold as an investment and we understand real estate as an investment. I don't know how many women majorly are there on the stock market. I would really like to see a surge there. It's a very, very male dominated industry. Yeah. I just want to ask you, do you think that there is a lack of relevant advice as far as gender is concerned, with all these companies that claim that they will help you, with financial advisory?
Yeah, actually, that's to some extent true. And I've fortunately not had a very bad experience as far as my advisors go. But I think you're right to an extent that this is something which these advisors are not really very sympathetic to women, nor are they, they don't empathize. And for them, it's like a very structured, put in this for every year and you'll have a retirement benefit coming out of it. And so they're not talking our language. For example, I remember when I initially started investing finally in 2015, 2014, and we'll come to how that genesis happened in a bit. But I did find that for me as a woman who was starting into investing, I wanted still some control and I still wanted some stability in my investments. Or, for example, I got into the habit of just making a recurring deposit for a couple of annual needs which I had. So I know every year I want to take a holiday. So I would just set aside some money every month in that. And I think I got very dissed for that. It might not have been the most growth oriented way of investing, but it gave me that freedom. So rather than if the investment advisors are a little bit aware of what women typically want, right? I'm sure you empathize with this. This is the
Absolutely, I
kind of
do.
need we
Yes.
have.
Yes.
So that's the kind of thing. Then I want to have a annual budget set aside which I can just pick up from and redo my house whenever I wanted to. We all love to do that kind of a thing. So it could be something very simple as that. And the thing is that the moment you have somebody empathizing with you and talking to you in that language, the bigger things become much, much simpler, right? So yeah, I think there is just a matter of sensitivity. They're doing their job, but their whole focus is on growth oriented, retirement plan, things like that. Whereas they need to understand what is the kind of savings or what kind of investments are women more comfortable with.
Do you feel that, if you go into a firm and there are lots of people there, that may not be the best setup for a housewife or a woman who's taken a break from her career? And do you think an individual financial advisor would be a better bet, for women who obviously they feel very insecure asking these questions? They feel, that they should ask. I mean, I will talk for myself and millions of other women that, you don't want to appear stupid because you are very scared of being taken for a ride because it's money. And everybody around you is advising you, be careful, be careful, be careful, because nobody wants us to take risks, you know and without risk there is no gain. And do you think that it is better to go with an individual person who will tailor make these things for you, or into a boutique firm where there are lots and lots of clients and you just become one of them? Just from your own personal experience, I would like to ask you this question.
No, I would say the individual matters in this. It's like you would go to a doctor you trust, so you build that relationship, the bedside manner. There's so many things which matter. So the whole fact that the person you're kind of consulting with and who you're working with on how to handle your money the best needs to be knowing you as a person. And I've seen that, early on before I have an investment advisor who I've been working with now for almost, well, 5 years or more. Uh, and earlier on, it was like the banks, the moment they say you've sold something, there's a big bunch of money sitting in your account. They will just try and come and tell you, "Aap ye investment laga do, put it into this, put it into that. This will give you retirement benefits." God, I don't want retirement benefits. I want my money to work for me. And this becomes extremely important in my kind of a case, because in around 2015, I was forced to take a break because of family circumstances and other things happening in my life. And if I had just gone by, so I sold a property, and if I'd gone by just listening to the bank guys, I wouldn't have been able to run my house. So finding the right kind of investment advisor really, really helps in such a circumstance, who understands you, who's sympathetic, empathetic, and is not trying to shove his own thoughts and, thinking into how you invest. Rather, the person needs to, it's literally how a doctor takes your pulse, sees all the measures, understands, naak block ho raha hai, saans theek se nahi aa raha hai, that kind of a thing, and then comes back with the proper solution for you. So definitely an individual advisor really, really helped in that case, who also helped me to firstly understand that I should, leave this whole attraction and that whole thing which we Indians have of holding on to your gold or your property, etc. I mean, it was and after that, I think I've convinced quite a few of my friends, guys, like, just think about reshuffling your portfolio away from property, because I realized that for a, whatever X amount of value house which you are holding on to in the market, the return on investment, if you look at it as a rental, is barely 2%. So that's when, that thing stuck in my head. And this is how I got educated on how you should actually put your money in ways which can actually work for you. So taking away money from, say, a house, I'm not saying everybody should go and sell their houses, but if you have like a thing to, nest egg, which is put away in a house, and you have the issue of suddenly finding yourself at the end of a divorce or anything like that, when you need to then fend for yourself, job's gone for some reason, uh, then you need to be able to consolidate your investments. You need to be able to consolidate your assets and become a little practical about the whole thing. Be very objective. I know this house for X amount is getting me a 2% ROI. If I was to take out that money and put it into even if I was going to put it in a bank or a fixed deposit, I would get at least 5% or 6%. That can run my house and give me a rental equal to that, right? So I'm earning more. And this is the very, very simple format. And of course, none of the advisors will ever tell you to put your money in the fixed deposits, because it's not really going to grow. You're not going to be able to beat inflation also. So you have to then find a balanced portfolio. Some things which, for example, if you have X, 100 rupees to invest, or you have a portfolio worth, say, 100 rupees, you would, anticipate your future needs. That when are the big spends coming? For me, it might be 5 years later, or I'm talking about 5 years earlier, I would be thinking like in 5 years, my son has to finish his graduation. So I need to have money to take care of those 4 years of expenses. Therefore, out of that 100, if 50 is going to go there or X amount, I need to have it in a short to middle term kind of investments or a portfolio, which keeps earning me money, little higher returns as well, and yet it's stable. So here I would not go for extremely high risky kind of investments. I would go for a moderate risk investment, which I can keep taking out and keep what do you say keep taking it out as I need it in a planned manner. And there would be about 30 or 40% which I would keep aside in long term investments. And here again is where men and women differ. I think we women have a little bit of more stable outlooks, and we don't get hassled. Although we are the emotional creatures, we do not get hassled so much. A lot of men would, oh my God, the stock market has gone down to such and such extent. Let me just, let me do something to make up for it. Whereas I know that, okay, this 30 I had kept aside for my long term planning. Therefore, I will not bat an eyelid.
So when you took all these decisions, Archana, I mean, how did your family and your friends and people around you who you trusted, were they um, worried about you? Were they skeptical? Because I'm sure it was a change that you were bringing into your personality. And I do find that with myself right now, right now when we are sitting and talking, I am in the midst of taking decisions about selling off a property and creating, maybe apartments out of it. And everybody's been telling me that, no, 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 you need to keep the land and the land will grow. And I don't know, I mean, how long I will survive, but I want to definitely create my own studio. I'm going to take my business forward. And there are days I'm extremely insecure about, whether this is the right decision I'm taking or not. So did you have these sort of challenges also with people around you?
In my case, it was. I mean,
Or
I
you
may
didn't
be a
listen
little
to
bit of
them?
an outlier, so it did not bother me to that extent. But I have seen this with many friends.
Yes.
After my whole experience with the divorce, and then having to suddenly become very financially savvy and take care of not only my immediate needs or my kids' needs, but also my long-term needs, and secure my financial future. I had to do a lot of juggling. In fact, forget about others. Initially, it was me myself who was questioning myself in terms of, oh, if I sell all my properties, then I won't have a house. So that kind of a thing. So it is also about educating yourself. And once I believed in that, like I said, I sold this concept to so many friends. So it's all about having that confidence to just take those decisions. People will question, but ultimately it's your life, Mohua. So we need to be able to stand our ground. I think this is where the
It's
whole
really
thing.
interesting that you talk about, that these are the decisions you only took after you had your divorce. And, this is for the listeners because, this pandemic, I have spoken to counselors and I've spoken to psychologists, and the number of separation and divorces has just spiked up. And there are so many women out there who are trying to navigate their own lives. And my heart actually reaches out to housewives because they're given pocket money, and a pocket money how a student would be given for a whole life. And here you are investing your years and years into a house that you make a home, children that you make them to become human beings. And so this is very interesting because you've navigated this divorce to work for you and not against you. And there are many women out there who would really benefit from this advice coming from you as to what are the first steps that they need to take if they are to be in a situation like this.
Yeah, especially for any of our listeners and the friends who might be facing such situations. I think the first step, and I'm talking from my personal experience, is to acknowledge the writing on the wall. It's not going to go away, and this is, my friend, this is what it is. So now you have two options: to either just kind of cry and pine your life away, or get back on your feet and make something out of yourself and ensure your own future. Because I'm sure a lot of women, especially the ones who are housewives, uh, even the working women, because I will digress a little bit here, is what I've seen is like a lot of working women, especially, and I mean all women, working or non-working, they do not have assets to their name. So all the family assets are in the husband's name typically,
Always.
most of the time. Yeah. And you might be lucky. Like in my case, I did have some joint investments. So like I said, I may be a little bit of an outlier, but I have seen many friends who do not have, who are totally dependent. Like you said, they're getting their pin money or their pocket money or the house money, and that's about it. And it's not just the ones who depend on the husbands for their money. It's even the working women, because typically what happens is then you start pulling in and you start running the houses, and all the investment decisions most of the time end up being taken by the husband. So when you are in such a situation, you may or may not have anything to your name.
Very recently, I was talking to a friend of mine who's also into wealth management, and she came across a woman, in Bangalore who she was talking to, and who's also again navigating, her separation and her divorce. And she was constantly defending by saying that no, he's got the car for me, and because I think we do a little dance in our head saying that no, there was a car that was bought, and the house was bought, but after a bit when things were really delved into, the car that was bought for her was actually in his name. The property that was bought was in his name. And, she was really devastated. And so it's very important, I think, also when things are being bought, it is extremely, I know it sounds very, very, because money is a dirty business that you talk between family. It's a very uncomfortable subject for most couples, because you would like to believe that you're going to lead your life forever and ever and ever. You're bringing up children, you're creating a home. Do you think that women, we need to really normalize the fact that whenever any asset is bought, that this has to be looked into by an external person that the woman trusts as much as the man trusts? And this should become like how, I often used to read about this, that there was a time when people were getting married and they wanted to check whether the man had AIDS and the woman had AIDS, and you check out on all these medical things between each other, and then you decide to take on the plunge, because marriage is very practical. Marriage isn't, we both have been married and we know what it's like. It's a very, very practical accommodation of two different individuals who have to come together to create a home. So do you think, Archana, you feel that this is also one thing that they need to add, apart from checking? I mean, in India they're still checking kundali, and they believe that the kundali will work, and if you're a manglik, then you're not going to find the right person, which is really interesting. That I don't know how much logic there is to the whole thing, but do you think this should also become a part and parcel of the entire nuptial prearrangement?
You mean a third person handling
The
whole
financial
thing?
part.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like women like me, I'm not savvy. I'm not at all savvy when it comes to money matters, and I wish that I had taken a lot of stuff, earlier. I had taken decisions more wisely in the beginning than what I did so many years later. Of course, an awakening is an awakening, but um, and why this podcast is because there are so many young girls who are going to get married, and I don't know whether their marriages are going to last, their marriages are going to stay, whether, and where will they find themselves. So that's the reason we as women who've gone through the entire experience, do you think there should also be one person who needs to be, part of this whole number?
Mama, I agree with you to some extent, but I also disagree. And by disagree, I mean that it's not a person. It's not you have to name somebody as the it to handle this. It all starts with women being aware of, financial well-being. So forget about women. Even this is advice I give to my son also.
Yes.
Every adult, anybody who's growing up in today's times and circumstances, especially more so women, I would say, but everybody literally needs to be aware of what is out there. What are the things you need to be watching out for? How to plan for your future in the long term, and therefore how to save, where to save. What does financial management mean? It could be something as simple as, okay, every month I earn 100 rupees. I will not spend more than 60 of it or 70 of it, and at least 30 I'm going to put away, however tough it might be. Because if I start doing that, putting that 30 away, I will have money to, if suddenly I'm without a job, I'll have at least three. They say you should have 3 or 6 months worth of money in your bank. If ever you're in that kind of a situation, you will have that. You will also be able to plan and work towards the future purchases, any big things which you want to buy, rather than just swiping your credit card. And
It's always an add-on card also in most
and there is
cases.
always an ad. I've had one of those earlier, but
Me
and
too.
I was just telling a friend the other day that a lot of women don't even have a credit card.
No, they don't.
It is just unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
totally unbelievable. So even while almost 80% women do have bank accounts in our country, I think there's a very small fraction. There's a debit card usage and debit card ownership. It's at least a 15-20% gap even in urban India.
I completely agree with you. Absolutely.
question here, or the main issue to address, is financial education.
Are there any checklists, Archana, that you think that people need to make, women need to make in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? Because invariably, when we are talking to each other, we are talking about women who are really at the far end of the horizon where they find themselves sometimes so insecure. If you look at, the survey, I think men will be a lesser number than women. So are there any checklists that, you would advise in their 20s, 30s, and their 40s that they need to keep?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, call it a checklist, call it just some mantras to live by. I think when you're getting into a marriage, say, one thing is when you're starting to work, you start investing, keeping aside some money into assets which don't have to get merged when you get married. It's something you grow, and I'm sure your partner to be, or anybody else, your husband, if you're already married, would already have things which they must have also done. And especially in today's day and age, when women are throwing their weight and working as well, it becomes extremely important to just keep it at, it's fine, you're coming together doesn't mean everything has to come together. So women definitely need to have that little bit of a nest egg for their own selves, because you and I have seen the uncertainty of how things just change, and especially in the last 2 years we've heard so many horror stories, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So,
Yeah.
no, definitely, you should have something which is totally yours. Another thing which I would say is, once you're in a relationship, you should be aware of what are your assets. Where's the money of the family? What's where? It could be in anybody's name. You need to know what's happening, because it's not just divorce. Sometimes, last 2 years, we've heard of people, the young people in their early 40s, 50s just passing away, and the woman didn't even know where the money was. And she
Oh,
had to
there are tons and
really
tons of
struggle.
people like that.
Yeah. So she had to
Yes.
really struggle. So therefore, it doesn't matter who's earning, whether both of you are earning, or it's just the husband's money that you're, the money, the rest of it, you're, investing so much of your time and effort and everything. So, you need to be aware. You need to firstly know where the family assets are lying, how are they distributed, etc. And like I said, to have something which is totally yours, and to co-own the family's assets. I think that is the only way we can, that's one of the biggest way women can safeguard their future, because in your 20s, when you're all rosy-eyed, you don't know where life's going to take you.
Absolutely.
Not, right? So, yeah. And if you are ever in a situation where you have to deal with things, be practical. Like I said, acknowledge the writing on the wall. Do an audit of what you have today, jointly and separately. Do a total audit, and then consolidate. Having consolidated, put your money to work.
Archana, you have an Excel sheet. Tell us, how
yeah.
do you map?
Oh,
and
my
tell
famous
me
Excel
the
sheet.
tools about your Excel sheet. I'm dying to know that, because I get so intimidated even if I have my media interviews on my Excel sheet. How do you manage that?
Oh, it's actually fun. And you know what? It was my crutch, or a tool which, it was like people do rosary beads. This became like my rosary bead in my early days of navigating.
You need to repeat that. Your Excel sheet became your rosary bead.
Yes, absolutely.
How wonderful is this, for the listeners to know that you need to also become tech savvy to understand and read and know that how is it that you need to keep all your planning, like the way you do your prayers in the morning, your exercise, you need to do this every day. So tell me more about the Excel sheet.
Oh, yeah, I will tell you about that. So, well, when I started out, I think it was one of my earlier advisors who suggested that, map your expenses. You should start budgeting, because, like I said, in that life when you kind of got very comfortable with the, nice income coming in and kids growing up and you having all this nice condo living and all that kind of stuff, you let yourself go, right? So you just, okay, I want to spend something, I'll spend the money. I don't really bother about how much am I really spending. Here was the time to take a hard look at where is my money going? How do I spend my money every month? I did not have a clue. Except for the rent, I did not have a clue. So that's when I made this Excel sheet, and I put down all the key, and I started very simple. I started with household expenses, right from rent to electricity to gas to my groceries to my kids' fee, clothes which had to be bought on a regular basis for my son, or anything like that, or my own, because if I'm working, I need to refresh my wardrobe. I'm just taking very simple examples here. So I committed it all to the Excel sheet, and then I just started entering it every single day. Because look, by this time I had done the other steps I just talked about of consolidating and knowing what my assets were, and then literally knowing, here's what I have, right? So it gave me a great comfort to keep on going back to one, the longer term plan sheet, and this everyday expense sheet, because that way I knew that I had control and I was doing things in a very thought through manner. I was not blowing up my money. I was still living a very comfortable, and I did not compromise on my standard of living or anything like that, but I did it in a very structured manner. So for the first time in my life, possibly at the age of how old was I? Well, almost 40 or a little older than 40, right? I started actually making and following a monthly household budget. So for 3, 4 months, I just kept entering. And the fact is that if you start consciously noting down what you're spending your money on, you become conscious about spending it, even at a subconscious level. That's what it starts. And after 3 or 4 months, I knew that, okay, here's my average spend pattern. This is when I arrived at a budget for myself, not on a total monthly level, but on each of those heads. And then it used to be fun to say, oh, this month I managed to save from this head. And then I could give myself a little treat or put it against maybe a new watch I wanted to buy or anything like that. So this gave me the discipline of being very thoughtful and mindful about spends, which and this is not something you should do only when you're in a position like this. This is something everybody should do. And the moment we do that, we actually do realize that there are a lot of money we just, we don't even think twice going and having that coffee at, Starbucks or wherever. You just go and do that. And the whim catches you, you go and buy a new top. Do you really need it? So it's not about being stingy, but about being mindful about how you spend your money. So this is and this, like I said, since I was doing it literally every day, and every few days I would look at the longer term plan sheet, which I'll just talk about, it gave me a great comfort. It was almost like a ritual, which is why I said it was like my rosary bead. So every night I would do this and see, oh, okay, I'm fine and all's well with the world. So it really helped me come to terms and navigate. So this really became a very, very useful tool for me. And the other thing was, of course, now that I had my assets consolidated, I had this other Excel sheet. And I was, because there are, in our age, when you're crossing 45 and you're wrong side of 45, most adults are struggling with job losses and whether we'll get another job again or anything like that. We don't know. So you need to have a contingency planning that what if I didn't have another job, how am I going to sustain myself? So once which is what led me to a decision about selling the house, for example, and then putting the money in ways where I could pay myself a salary out of what the money was earning for me, and that salary is the inflow.
So now, out of the rosary beads, I need to know how you overcame the odds and what are the fun things you did after you found your wings. Archana, tell me about that. The wings that we find when we are, in our 40s and in our 50s is a wing that is absolutely of a different level. We're not fluttering anymore like a metaphor. We've actually found the wings. What are the fun things that you did?
I think the biggest thing I've done for myself is through all the things which I've done in the last few years, be it going back to my reading, trying to go back to my writing, just being myself, being totally unapologetic about being a so-called failure, in my marriage or anything. I just became totally in love with myself. So I think I taught myself, and I'm not saying like I forced myself to, but this is how it evolved. The moment you get comfortable in your own skin, the moment you start loving yourself, that's when you can take flight.
What about dating?
Uh, well, maybe there's somebody out there still, but I'm, like I said,
Do you
right now,
still believe in love?
yes, why not? But I think the love I believe in is that each person should love themselves the most. I'm not talking about being selfish here, but you should love yourself fully before you get into any relationship. Because if you don't love yourself, your confidence will not be very, very high. And then when these shakeups come, or like we've seen a lot of women get told that ये पैसे की बात है तुमको नहीं पता पड़ेगा, this
Oh,
money I
absolutely.
will handle it.
Oh, yeah,
So all
absolutely.
of that and many other forms of gaslighting, which happen to a lot of women. So that's why a woman needs to know how to love herself first. So after in the last few years, that's something which I've really come into, and I just started loving my own company. So now if somebody comes into my space, very well and good, and it has to be really that kind of a situation. Otherwise, where is the time? To be honest, there's so much to do. One of the first things I did was coincided with my younger one going away to college. I took my first solo trip ever. And in this, I visited like Canada, many cities in Canada. There are a couple of places where I had friends, so I had that comfort of visiting them. And then I went to Montreal and Quebec, which are totally French speaking, and I don't know French. But with my, merci beaucoup and bonjour and showing the map, this is where I want to go, I managed.
How lovely.
So I got over that fear of, oh, how can I travel on my own? And I made so many friends on that trip.
I need you to tell a little bit more about how you took that first plunge about traveling, because lots of women are very, very frightened, including me.
I think I just love traveling, and we had been doing that off and on as a family. Maybe not as the kids grew, we had started doing a lot of international travels, and we were traveling a bit. And this is something I just totally adore. So this is something which I did not want to stop. It doesn't stop, right? And it should go on. And right now, I actually don't even have to worry about, okay, who will like what and what will they like to eat, etc. I could just go do anything which I wanted, right? So I just, and this was also a very, tough time in the sense that my second one was also going away to college. So I didn't want to come.
My God,
back
empty
home.
nest.
I did not want to come
absolutely.
home. So I decided that before I come home and deal with that, let me, kind of just mark this whole passing of, it's literally a passing of rights. So I just wanted to go and do something special for myself, because for the last 2-3 years, I had navigated all of that. I'd, consolidated my finances, got my son off to college, and I dropped him. And now I had to face a life alone. So why not start it with a fun thing? So that was the, and here again, I have my Excel sheet where there are different sheets in that whole Excel file. So where I start with, okay, here are the destinations I want to go to. So if I've decided on a country, I would identify what are the places I want to go to. How many days do I want to stay in each of those? And therefore, do I do hotel? Do I do Airbnb? This was the first time I actually dared to do Airbnb, and it was a wonderful experience. So I just put that down, again, make the budget. And since I know, this one, of course, was after my Excel sheet was already in place. So I had been saving away for this trip. So I could just go and, enjoy myself. So, those are the kind of little rewards which women like to give themselves. So when you're doing all your financial planning and, taking advice, you should be aware. This is what women want. So, so that's how, I started planning it. And since then, I've been doing it every other year or every year, whenever, often with just my girlfriends, a couple of times just alone, and sometimes, of course, even with my kids. So it's, but then I plan everything again using this, Excel sheet and do my bookings and everything. And just love to travel.
Lovely. So, you know what? I will share a quote that I find extremely interesting by Joan Rivers, who's this American talk show host. And it says, people say that money is not the key to happiness. But I always figured if you have enough money, you can get a key made.
Absolutely.
So please, whoever are listeners, please know that you can get the key made if you can know how to manage your money. And before I end today's podcast, I have a few pertinent facts to share that women across the world have much less to spend and even lesser to save. The World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report 2020 says men and women will only have pay equality in 257 years. My heart breaks as I read this. Of the 153 countries studied for the report, India ranks 112th on the overall Global Gender Gap Index. For many women, especially from the lower income jobs and the informal sector, saving is a luxury that they cannot even imagine or afford. Thank you so much, Archana, for being on today's podcast. I look forward to having more conversations with you going forward. And I think empowerment means financial independence. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mohua. Thank you for having me.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.